You are listening to the Alpha Talk podcast with Ricky Paulson, brought to you by Alpha News. To download this podcast and more, visit our Alpha Talk page on the SoundCloud app and Spreaker app. To view more videos, visit alphanewsmn.com or see our social media pages. If you've been keeping up with Alpha News reports lately, you would have seen an article published about daycare fraud in the Twin Cities. Daycare fraud has been a problem in Minnesota for a while, but recent reports say it's worse than we feared. In a recent Fox 9 investigation, it was revealed that fraudulent child care programs have abused government subsidies, resulting in millions of dollars being wrongfully collected by these programs. These government subsidies were in place to help low-income families, and according to investigator Scott Stillman, businesses have been gaming the system to steal millions for years. Child care fraudulence is a problem in itself, but what Fox 9 reported was truly astounding. Fox 9 reported that not only was government money being wrongfully collected, but this money was being sent overseas to terrorist organizations. That wasn't alarming enough. Some say that government officials knew about the fraudulence but didn't take the right steps to stop it. Attorney General candidate Doug Wardlow says that blame falls on Lori Swanson. Wardlow told Alpha News reporter Christine Baumann that Swanson simply failed to do her job. I wanted to hear more about this situation, so I caught up with Doug Wardlow today to see why he feels this way. So Doug, what laws were in place for the government to take action in a situation with these fraudulent daycares?
We have a situation here where daycare centers are being set up and then run in a way that children who aren't actually being cared for are being paid for by the state. So that's misappropriation of state child care subsidy dollars. And that's actually a crime in Minnesota already. And actually, Minnesota Statute 256.98 gives the Attorney General the power to prosecute child care fraud and other kinds of welfare fraud.
What authority does the Attorney General have in a case like this?
The Attorney General is the one who should be leading the charge on investigations of welfare fraud, including fraud of child care subsidy programs. And so the Attorney General has the power to prosecute these cases criminally, or she can direct a county attorney to do it, or she can bring a civil suit to recover money for the state. So the Attorney General can coordinate and lead an investigation, the Attorney General can prosecute, and the Attorney General can and should, in this instance, bring lawsuits to recover monies for the state.
Why, instead of other government agencies like the Department of Human Services, why do you believe that in this case the blame falls on the Attorney General position?
Precisely because the Attorney General, in this case Lori Swanson, is the top law enforcement official in the state. She's the only statewide officer who actually has the power to go ahead and on her own investigate and then prosecute these crimes, and to stop the flow of child care subsidy payments to people that don't deserve them, and by virtue of that, stop the flow of child care subsidy payments overseas to terrorist organizations and hawalas controlled by Al-Shabaab.
In this situation, if you had the Attorney General position, how would you have treated this fraudulent daycare differently?
Well, I would not have been derelict in my duties like Lori Swanson has. She has been ignoring the situation for at least 5 years, probably longer. She had known about this for quite some time. There have been prosecutions by the Hennepin County attorney on this 5 years ago. So Lori Swanson should have, and what I would do is put resources on this, lead an investigation, coordinate with the Department of Human Services to make sure that they have the resources they need to put together cases, and then prioritize the prosecution of those cases, also line up civil cases to sue these folks and get money back for the state. These people need to go to jail, and we need to get money back for the state. We have $100 million of child care subsidy funds that are not going to kids that need them, but rather a lot of it's going to terrorist organizations, and that's because Lori Swanson has been derelict in her duties.
So you had said that Lori Swanson has spent too much time grandstanding against President Trump. Do you think that hindered her ability to do her job in this case?
Absolutely. So Lori Swanson has politicized the office of the Attorney General. She has been suing President Trump on the travel ban. She recently sued President Trump with respect to a question he wants to put on the census asking about citizenship. And the idea there is to just identify hotspots of illegal voting and make sure we have an accurate record of the number of citizens in our country. Very simple stuff. But Lori Swanson is bringing baseless political lawsuits and using the taxpayer dollars of Minnesotans and the powers of her office to do these political things. Meanwhile, she's eviscerated the criminal law division of the office and the welfare fraud unit, and she's not investigating and she's not prosecuting welfare fraud cases. And the result has been that we have $100 million that has gone to to people that don't deserve that money, not to care for kids, but rather being sent overseas in remittances, and a lot of that's ending up in the hands of terrorist organizations.
So fraudulence of daycare is bad in itself. And on top of that, it's also that money going to terrorist organizations. Why should citizens of Minnesota be outraged at Lori Swanson?
They should be outraged because the Attorney General is the top law enforcement and legal official in the state, and the Attorney General needs to stand up for the rule of law, right? The Attorney General needs to enforce our laws, needs to safeguard the public fisc, needs to safeguard taxpayer dollars, and stand up for the people. Lori Swanson's not doing that. She apparently doesn't care about the rule of law. You know, if you can have all the laws you want, but if you don't actually enforce them, they're not worth the paper they're printed on. Lori Swanson is busy doing political things, grandstanding against the president, rather than standing up and enforcing the law and making sure that our child care subsidy programs are doing what they're supposed to do and not being defrauded.
So do you think this is a simple case of Lori Swanson letting her political agenda getting in the way of actually doing her job?
It absolutely appears to be the case, yes. We know that she has politicized the office. We know that she has moved lawyers out of the criminal law division. We know that she's not taking the lead on any law enforcement or public safety initiatives. She is not using the office to combat welfare fraud like the Attorney General's office is supposed to do. So she's not doing her job on all those different fronts. Instead, she's grandstanding against the president. So she's putting politics over the rule of law. She's putting politics over her job, putting politics over the people, and that's wrong.
All right. Thank you, Doug, for joining us today.
Thank you.
You are listening to the Alpha Talk podcast with Ricky Paulson, brought to you by Alpha News. To download this podcast and more, visit our Alpha Talk page on the SoundCloud app and Spreaker app. To view more videos, visit alphanewsmn.com or see our social media pages. Music courtesy of Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com.